Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 11th and tonight's movie is Southbound. This is an anthology horror movie, which for me are very hit or miss. Just like anything, it highly depends on how it's done. Sometimes it kind of just feels like they made a bunch of short movies because none of the ideas were strong enough to make a whole movie. Other times it really works. There are 4 or 5 short films in this, and they all have the theme of people in cars, I guess. When it comes to who's directing the short films, there are a few familiar names here. We got Radio Silence, the team which made Ready or Not, and Roxanne Benjamin, who directed Body at Brighton Rock. And also 2 other directors who I've never heard of. In the trailer, they boasted of being from the minds that brought us VHS, but I don't remember liking VHS very much. For me, the best anthology horror movies are the ones that have something connecting the movies together. Trick or Treat is a great example of that. I'm not sure how the different stories in Southbound are connected or if they're even connected at all. I'm gonna go check it out. I'm going to give Southbound a 6 out of 10. It's really bizarre because all of these stories make enough sense on their own, but they make a little bit less sense when you put them together. By the way, apparently I was wrong. One of the directors I said I'd never seen anything from directed one of the segments in VHS, so there's that. This was one of the movies where I had to look up plot summaries to see if I missed anything after it was over, and I really didn't miss much. The 4 different short stories, because it's really 4, the first and last are part of the same story. They're all varying degrees from to pretty good. The bookending segment, the one directed by Radio Silence, is definitely the best one. And the third one, The Accident, was my least favorite. Mostly, I'm just confused about how they went about connecting these stories together. I feel like there are 2 main ways that you could do a film like this. The first is the Trick or Treat way, where they are all very clearly part of one larger story. The stories sort of bleed into each other, there are cohesive themes, it's all one thing. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we got something like the dark tapes, where the individual parts are not connected to each other at all. The only thing really connecting them is this one, bookending or overarching story that sort of plays in between the segments. Southbound lands somewhere in between those, and I don't think it worked out very well. It's one of those movies where it, suggests that there might be a way that this all makes sense, but that's something the audience is going to have to figure out, and I'm not into that. I don't need things to be, spoon-fed to me, but there's a difference between being too obvious and just not really giving the audience enough at all. Once again, I want to reiterate that the short movies on their own are decent. Some of them are better than others, but they all work in their own right. It's just, I don't understand the way they put this together. And I really can't explain why I don't like the way they put it together without going into spoilers. So, quick sum up. The segments on their own are fine. I'm not a fan of the way they were put together. I think that both Trick or Treat and The Dark Tapes were better horror anthologies than this one, but this isn't bad. And now I really want to do the spoiler segment. The bookending story, it's actually told out of order. You see the end of it at the very beginning, and you see the way it starts at the end. Except the part that you see only answers maybe a third of the questions that the first part raised. It's these 2 guys, and they clearly did something bad, and they're being punished for it by these weird Dementor-looking things. They sort of vaguely explain what their motivations were, but you don't even know what they did or even what their relationship to each other is. They both die, and then there's this transition to the next story starting, where these 3 young women are at a motel, and they're a band that's on the road, and they break down in the middle of the desert. Then they get picked up by this weird couple, and it's pretty standard. These people are weird, they're trapping us, I don't know what's going on, something really sinister is happening. Only one is able to escape, and then she is immediately ran over by a car. Which is really stupid in 2 ways, because 1, the driver of the car was on the phone, swiping pictures with headphones in, talking to his wife. This isn't even texting while driving, it's doing as many things as possible while driving while still technically driving. But conversely, the survivor girl, her name was Sadie, she should have been able to tell that the car was not slowing down at all. I don't remember her even attempting to jump out of the way. And then we get into the next story, which is the driver of the car, Lucas, getting on a 911 call and trying to save Sadie's life. The whole thing was really gory and also a little tedious. The people on the other side of the 911 call are revealed to have, evil intentions, and this next story begins with one of the 911 dispatchers hanging up the phone at a payphone, and then going to a bar. And then the last story, it's one where there's so much backstory that you don't know. It's definitely the most interesting one out of all of them, but there's a lot that they're not telling us. This guy is trying to save his sister from this weird, I think it's supposed to be a demonic cult. But it turns out that she likes it there, and in the process, he gets mauled by the demons. And then you get to this family of 3 at this vacation house that have these 3 home invaders come in and kill all of them, and 2 of them are revealed to be the 2 guys from the first story. So now you know what they did, you just don't know why. They don't even explain what the dad, in this case, did in order to warrant this. I guess he had something to do with one of the intruder's daughters dying. It's not stated. Now, the stories I told you about really don't seem to have that much in common, except for this location of some random desert in the middle of the night. It could be that it's the same supernatural force causing all of these things, but if that's the case, the motives, method, and execution are completely different with each story. In the wraparound segment, the demons are punishing people for doing bad things by killing people. In the second story, it's this weird demonic cult of humans that sacrifice people to the demons. In the third story, it's either demons or people with the aid of demons using, magic powers to mess with someone and make them do terrible things, but then they just let him leave. And in the fourth story, it's another cult where it's either all demons or a mix of demon worshippers and demons, and they just kill a guy just because. So pardon me if I'm having a hard time connecting these 4 stories together. Apparently the Dementor-looking things, they were at the end of every single story. I only saw them at the end of the 4th one. If those demons punish people for doing evil, why are they okay with the other demons or even people in the area doing things that are just as bad? And why was the distracted driver the only one who was allowed to leave alive? He only got involved with this stuff because he was being an idiot. I think that this story would have been better, the overarching story would have been better if they hadn't have even tried to make this overarching story or themes. Make it a true anthology, just different things happening in this desert. They don't really coalesce together because why would they? They're all written and directed by different people. This is an odd example of an anthology movie that ends up being less than the sum of its parts, but the parts are good enough that I wouldn't call it a bad movie. I would just say that it is needlessly confusing. And that's that for today. I'll see you tomorrow.